conversation dares to go deep, not wide. I'm your host, Shreya, and we are joined by Emily Erstad, author, soulful coach, and strategic leader whose work lives at the intersection of identity, leadership, and emotional truth. In her book, It's Not That Deep, Emily gently unpacks what it means to be human, and in this episode, we are exploring a powerful theme, the difference between vulnerability and transparency. Ready to peel back the layers? So, welcome, Emily. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, Emily, your book and your life both uh, explored the emotional depth. So, what is the distinction you draw between vulnerability and transparency, and why does it matter in our relationship and leadership?
Yeah. When I look at vulnerability and transparency, I really like to dial back to like what the definition is. It's very clear to me, like what are you need to be clear with your intentions, right?
Yeah.
So when you're transparent, that's typically an introductory tool. You know who you are, you know what your core values are, and you're comfortable sharing that with people in your environment. So to be transparent, it's important to identify who you are as a person and what you're comfortable with people knowing about you. And I look at transparency and vulnerability as a spectrum, right? So vulnerability comes when you kind of let people know who you are. You build trust where vulnerability exists, and so it's a necessary evil, as I like to say,
Yeah.
because vulnerability definitely isn't somewhere I love to live, but is necessary to create meaningful relationships. So you might be more vulnerable with people that you've been transparent with that understand your intention and you're trying to build trust to accomplish really difficult goals, right? So when you're a leader, I think it's a great tool to use. And I hate to use it as a tool, but I like to I the term tool can seem manipulative, but that's not the intention here. The intention is these are tools you can use to build effective teams and create a really strong foundation to leverage all of your professional and emotional growth, right? Vulnerability comes probably in smaller groups, and with people that you've known for a bit of time that you're willing to really get raw and honest with who you are as a person. And I think you'll frequently move through the spectrum. It's not a one size fits all approach, and it's not really you don't want to be all or nothing. And that's why I like to kind of
Mhm.
differentiate the two terms so that you understand where's your frame of mind when you're approaching a conversation.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. And also, can someone be transparent without truly being vulnerable?
It's a great question. I don't feel like no. I mean, I guess it depends on your level of comfortability with yourself. There's parts of me that I'm a very open book kind of person, so my spectrum might look a little bit different than yours, right? Or somebody else's. To me, I have deep emotions. I have a lot of thoughts. So there's a lot of surface level things about me that I don't feel like are very vulnerable. And that's a good point. Like vulnerability, that definition varies from person to person. So I can be transparent without being vulnerable. Typically, vulnerability to me is when I'm putting an emotional energy behind something that I might get my feelings hurt a little bit if someone poked at it too hard, right? Like this is something, and I think that's a tool that you practice over and over again. The
Yes.
more I like on podcasts, the more I write, the less my vulnerability hurts. But I would say when you're in the early stages of this development, probably not. It's probably not possible to be transparent and not vulnerable. But as you develop that piece of yourself by building trust and relationships, I think you can move along the spectrum and actually lengthen your spectrum. To fit the needs of your environment.
Yes, yes. And that subtle difference could be the reason why some connections feel hollow even when everything is shared. And also, as a leader in the hospice space, how do you navigate holding emotional space for others while honoring your own boundaries?
Yeah. It's a daily practice. Some days I'm better, some days I'm worse. What I would tell you professionally, I've had to learn to have degrees of separation from certain people in my environments because as you're saying, hospice is super vulnerable. You're correct. Very intimate to be with people that are in their last stages of life. And so I think it's just choosing the right people to put in those situations and the timing that you have those conversations. There's moments with my team, I tend to be the barrier. Like the buck stops with me, right? Like the emotion, I'm the one that has to guide the emotional compass of my team. And you're naive to think that hospice isn't emotional. Of course, my staff are emotional. That vulnerability is so crucial in these intimate moments with people. I think it's a huge tool that we use to make people feel safe and trusted in hard times. And I think it's
Yeah.
a wonderful gift to have. Um, Obviously, intentional space is a big thing that I've had to do, which isn't my favorite because I love being connected. I love being with people, but sometimes my job is to create the space for people to feel and to also respect a boundary. I also think it's just being very clear in your intentions and the framework you're creating for that team, whether it be personal or professional. Obviously, in this context, I'm speaking professionally. But I think it can generalize to your personal life too. Like, what are your intentions? What do you want out of this interaction? And then sticking to that, even though like your passion and the emotion might carry this conversation further than you were ready. Just making sure you round back to those points so that you are clear in what the interaction was supposed to be.
Yes, yes. And I think there is something sacred about leading with empathy in spaces where life meets the ages. And also, do you ever feel the tension between being seen and being strong?
Oh, God. That's a really good question. All the time. All the time. I think it's difficult. Prince, let's move some vulnerability. Very young in this role. I'm 30, and it's not something I love to talk on because I feel like sometimes it can diminish my own credibility. But I also think it's
Mhm.
something we need to hear. Age in the workplace has been a big discussion, and obviously experience equates to a lot of wisdom. But I think you can also gather that same wisdom through diversity of experiences, which is what I've chosen to do. So being seen for me has meant different things in different environments. Sometimes, I leave conversations feeling a little anxious, like maybe I was a little too raw, a little too open.
Mhm.
But if you're not willing to take those risks, you're not going to build those relationships and get these opportunities, right? So, there's definitely a delicate balance. I wish I could give you a playbook of what that looks like, but I can tell you with clear intentions and gathering information about myself and knowing who I am and really investing that passion back into myself, I've had the confidence to be able to go into some of these trickier scenarios where maybe I'm not so scared to be seen. Being seen has not always been my favorite thing, but it's been something I've been challenging with myself with the podcast and the book publishing to be seen because what I'm saying is important. So I think truly those are synonymous because for me, being seen is strong because I would probably prefer not to be seen if I'm honest. But also enjoy the connection, the opportunity that comes from being seen. So it's like kind of a giant
Mhm.
contradiction, you know?
Yes, yes. And thank you for sharing all these stories. I think it's beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
you talk about quiet strength and creating emotional safety. So, what does that look like in action for yourself and for those you lead or coach?
It's surrounding myself with people I trust, So that was my first step. I was putting the wrong energy into the wrong people, and that was resulting in going the wrong direction that wasn't really aligning with who I was. And I think, there's never a wrong person in general, but sometimes for situations in your life or timing in your life, there are. And so I had to be really clear in what my goals were, where I was going, who I wanted to be on that journey. And then knowing and getting really honest that I'm probably going to mess up. I'm probably going to share things I shouldn't say. I'm probably going to be really honest to the point that it makes myself uncomfortable. And that's just the hazard of the job. There's still days, I go to work and I come home, I'm like, gosh, was I too honest? Was I too vulnerable? Was it too much? Like,
Yeah.
I still feel that way because I'm so cognizant of my surroundings. So for me specifically, like, I'm an observer. I always enjoy, like, I feel people's feelings deeply, hence the title of my book. So for me, it was kind of reversing that narrative and really putting that passion in myself to have the
Mhm.
strength to guide these scenarios instead of being along for the ride. I think a lot of us creative feelers would rather ride the wave than direct the energy. And I think we're coming into a season of life where we might need to shift that narrative a bit just to add some guidance and structure.
Yes, yes. That's wonderful. And how do we build that safety when we ourselves are still healing?
It's a great huh. Um, daily, it's dynamic. I think it's dynamic. I think it's
Mhm.
understanding that it's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectionists talk about it in the book, like, you're not gonna get it right every time, and that's just a harsh truth, and you're gonna go home and wish you did something differently. So I think just radical honesty and vulnerability of, I'm human, I'm doing the best I can. I had a conversation with my team last week. I'm like, "I'm doing the best I can, but I can only do so much. I'm human too.
Mhm.
So give me some feedback. Tell me what you need, what you don't need." And then when you ask for that feedback, make sure you're in the mental space to accept it. I think we're frequently the personality that just gets so much input that like people give you feedback and you're like, okay, I wasn't ready for that. Now I'm overwhelmed. So, only ask for feedback when you're ready to hear it and then implement it quickly. I think
Yeah.
instead of having that constant feedback loop, like I used to in the beginning of my leadership journey, people were constantly giving me feedback, like on how I dressed, when I walked, who I was. And I was like, okay, is this even productive for me? Right. Like I have to be able to be me to be confident. Right. So first get that figured out, still accept feedback, but choose when you're going to accept it because we know that our personalities are going to take it. Right. And then really identifying the feedback and identifying the results so people understand that they hear you and you hear them, you know?
Yeah. 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 Yes, and I think safe spaces aren't passive. They are curated through deep, intentional presence. And I think the way you explained it, it's so beautiful. And let's talk about emotional intelligence in leadership. So, how can leaders balance clarity with compassion, especially when tough decisions are involved?
Yeah. I think the first step is realizing everybody's doing the best they can with what they have. So kind of taking
Mhm.
that, kind of approaching scenarios with curiosity instead of judgment. It's so easy, and I find myself difficult of this often, or struggling with this often, like to get angry with someone because they're not meeting you where you're at. But as a leader, it's your job to meet them where they're at. So leadership is very selfless. It has to be, but it doesn't mean you disregard yourself either. And so, you can only control and only you can know what those boundaries look like for you. And so I think it's just radical accountability. Like you want to be vulnerable, but you also want to be accountable. And if you're going to be accountable to yourself, you also have to hold your team to that same accountability. And so that's kind of how you start to build those spaces that create like this beautiful emotional intelligence. When I was talking to someone about this earlier. You get really effective and efficient with your system so that there's time for the person at the job. If you can get effective with your systems, get the work done, there's time to invest in your leaders. You should invest. You should mentor people. If you feel like you've leveled up, you don't stop there. You take the time to pass that on to the next person so that they can also amplify and multiply those results. And I think that's how, as tedious as emotion is, as subjective as it is, we never know whether it's coming or going. It's a necessary evil, and we have to make time for it and assign processes and results to the emotion so that it doesn't consume us or our staff.
Yeah, I think you have said that so beautifully. And there is a question of mine that many leaders, especially who are just starting, uh, they just try to avoid challenges. So,
Yeah.
what is the mechanism that they just stop doing to avoid challenges and face it?
Fear is obviously why we always tend to avoid things, right? Like I'm not a very fearful person till I am. I've always been the type of person where I run straight into challenges, probably a little too fast without any recollection or recognition of what a hard thing this could be. So I'm a runner, and that's a good thing until it's not, until you find yourself in a thick situation that you're like, maybe I should have thought that through a little bit, right? So for
Yeah.
me specifically, I have to pair myself with someone that's gonna pump my brakes a little bit. So I think if a first step obviously is always just to recognize that that's even something that you're struggling with. If you don't have the awareness, there's nothing I or anybody else can do that for. If you find yourself hesitant to take big risks, hesitant to um, jump on a challenge, first of all, what's your goal? Is the challenge aligning with your goal? And if it is, then you need to find someone that's going to push you and challenge you to overcome that. You need an accountability partner, and then you have to get over yourself and just power through. Worst case scenario, you mess up, you learn from it, you try again. We all mess up. You get fired from the job, there's 12 other jobs out there. And that's kind of the beauty of it is just if the worst happens, you're still going to figure it out. And that's okay, you know?
Yeah, this is wonderful. I think this will really help some leaders and also who are starting in their journey, in the beginning of their journey. I think thank you for sharing this.
Of
And
course.
also, have you ever had to lead with heart in moments that demanded high stake action?
Every time. And I think that's where my anxiety kind of started from and why I wrote the book, right? Like, I mean, I started as a therapist, wasn't really planning on getting into leadership. And because I wanted to care for the person first, and found out that it's a little bit bigger than me. And it was a little selfish of me to think I was going to avoid that leadership development because that was the hard road. That is the hard road. Like leading other people is not easy work. And leadership isn't always, at home. It's not always at work. It's at home. It's the whole person. And I think, when you start to look at emotional intelligence, that's kind of a roundabout way to answer your question.
Right.
It's a whole person activity, right? So if you're not doing everything with your full heart, I'm not sure what you're doing. And you should probably realign yourself. Because I have found when you align yourself with your core values and then align your goals with those core values and start being really consistent and accountable, that emotional intelligence doesn't just transfer to professional development, it's also your personal development. And then it's really easy to put your full heart and your full energy into something because it just aligns with you. And it kind of avoids that burnout cyclical cycle that we all find ourselves in because we're doing something because we truly believe in it. And I think,
Mhm.
I would say so mostly everything I do is full heart, right? I take what I do very personally and very seriously because it matters and it matters to the families, it matters to my nurses, it matters to my, my partners in the business. It matters to me in my book and my publishing, my podcasting. Like it all comes full circle. And I think that's what's been really beautiful about this alignment is when you're that aligned, even things that don't feel like they're going to translate back, they do. And that gives you the energy to do everything with your full heart.
Yes, yes. I think it's very important, and I think the basic thing that we need before we do any work, that's to be there with your heart. But often many people just forget it, or they just do because of they have to do or something, for force or something. But it's very important to do it from your heart. That's so true. And thank you for sharing this point.
Of course.
And do you have some tips, or do you want to say something to the leaders who are just beginning their journey, like any kind of thing that they should avoid, or some mistakes or any challenges they can face?
Sure. I'll share a little bit about who I am just so that you know where my lens is coming from because you might be my opposite, but also finding yourself in the same
Yeah.
position. For me, the strategy was I started off just learning everything I could, whether it be and just taking the risks because I was young and I had that opportunity to do it. So I went grand and I did everything I could to learn about who I was, learn about my career, chase opportunities that might feel a little outlandish. I would say this is the time to do it if this is the road you want to take. And then once you figure out all those pieces and you kind of go at it with a wide lens, start to understand who you are and what your strengths are. And you're not going to know that until you've tried a few things, lived a little bit of life, failed a couple hundred times, right? And then when you start to figure that out, you start to figure out what situations fit you the best. And then you can kind of start to dial in and bring back some of that energy that you were using to explore the world, to explore yourself.
Mhm.
Which wow, that sounded very poetic. But so when you start exploring yourself, you give yourself that passion to push others, to push yourself to accomplish those goals. And then you find yourself inspiring yourself to do other things that you never would have imagined. The job I'm currently in, I wasn't ready for. Had just grown a team
Mhm.
and loved that team. Got headhunted for this job and jumped into an opportunity that I didn't even think I had the energy to freaking handle it, and I did it, and it's actually been it gave me I tend to self-doubt just because of my age and in the times, like, we all do it, right? Imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
just jumped in and didn't even consult the fear. I decided that, I'm gonna do this the best I can and just be consistent. So whatever you do, and then depending on your time of life, be consistent and be intentional. Really reflect on that. Take time to reflect. Write down your thoughts.
Yeah.
Revisit thoughts. Be accountable to yourself. Because if you're not going to do it, then who will?
Yeah.
I think if you can do those things in the beginning, but just always have a mindset that's open to opinions and learning and opportunity. And I think that mindset should never change. And if you do find it changing, you need to reevaluate yourself quickly because that's where you're going to find yourself going places you probably didn't mean to go.
Yes, yes, true. And thank you for sharing these insights. And also for those who are listening and struggle to open up or fear being too much, what is one practice that can help them to start softening into themselves?
Sure. Um, if you have a big goal, I don't know, pick something that scares the crap out of you and write it down. And then I would say, let's dial it back and choose a daily goal, a weekly goal, a monthly goal. Just slowly start stair stepping yourself towards that opportunity. And then if that's really scary, find something really comfortable to accompany with it so that you can have the discomfort, but also fall back on something comfortable. That comfort might be a relationship, it might be a hobby. Maybe your professional career isn't your focus, and that's your comfort, and the relationship piece of it is what makes you uncomfortable. Just make sure you have a safe space to return to so that you don't burn yourself out constantly trying to figure out who you are. I have done that where I've just tried everything new all at once. And I think everybody goes through that season of life too, where you're like, I just need to change everything. And that's okay too, but just know that you need to return to some type of comfort to have a grounding experience to be able to continue to explore what that looks like long term.
Yes, yes. I think it is so true. And sometimes the first brave step is not being loud, but it's just to being honest with yourself. And thank you for sharing all this experience and knowledge of yours. This is so wonderful conversation with you. And if my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, it's not that deep underscore author. And if any of these like if you like the thoughts that are going on here, I would definitely encourage you to buy my book. It's on Amazon. It's not that deep. I'm sure you could put the link in the message. Also, uh, there's my email too. Email is eepublicationsllc@gmail.com. And so any of those ways, if you want to connect, I'm excited, but I would encourage you to pick up a copy of my book. I love to hear your insights and your experiences. That's the reason why I love doing this. So
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all the details and links below so that my listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and can have a talk with you because you're a wonderful person and what you do is really, really amazing. And the way you shared your experience, knowledge, and everything is very commendable. So, to my listeners, Emily reminds us that living with heart isn't about exposure, it's about embodiment. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a form of trust. Transparency isn't performance, it's permission. So take a breath, soften your edges, and remember peace doesn't come from hiding who you are, it comes from honoring it fully.